There you go. That's what I'm going to do. My name is Chad Everett Harris. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer of Riot Blockchain. And I'm pretty excited to be here today. And I know that was a mouthful, but interesting enough there, I love a good $20,000 Bitcoin price. Right? I love it. Actually, I think it's the greatest thing for this industry. Because, there's a lot of people that fall into Bitcoin for various reasons, and I am actually one of them, right? I had a problem. I didn't like the conditions of how a bank told me something, and I sought out a different solution to solve my problems, and it happened to be Bitcoin. And I learned it from my youngest son, who if you go back in history, in 2011, he was buying Bitcoin with money orders because he wanted to shop online. And he'd figured out a way to do it, and he was in 8th grade. And so I credit everything to Ashton Harris, who actually happens to be our CTO at Whinstone. And when you kind of think about a $20,000 Bitcoin price, I was on the phone with a fellow miner today, another large, publicly traded company, and he said, well, what do you think about the price? And I was like, well, as long as it's above $3,000, I'm better off today than I was the day that I started building Whinstone. Because Whinstone was, when we started raising the money, it was in the 3,000s. It ran up to 11,000. We were able to sell what we had in Bitcoin, to get us about $1 million to kind of get us to Texas. And then the rest is kind of history. So I think it's important because, it's difficult to run one of these businesses, and it's difficult to run one of these businesses when the price is $60,000. And I know that sounds kind of funny, that it's difficult to run one of these businesses when the price is $60,000 because every single person thinks they can come and do it, which then ultimately leads to a problem of supply chain issues. It leads to a problem of an FEA with a transmission company like Encore, and they start getting mad at miners that can post their deposits and take the time to do the studies because they're wasting their time on miners that get them to do all these studies and then ultimately don't post the FEA deposit to then get an interconnect. And so they start getting frustrated. ERCOT starts getting frustrated with us because they'll have an open meeting and other miners show up to it and blurt out words like, we're going to build 50 gigawatts of Bitcoin mining. And I'm like, there is not one of us all together that can afford to do that. And so it's great that it's at $20,000 because all the people along the way that were buying miners at $50,000 and $60,000 prices have to reevaluate their business incentive alignments to determine how they can afford to build. And I think it's important. I also look at this time as the most important time in Bitcoin mining at the current price, because one or two things are going to happen, and somebody's right. And I always say that. One or two things are going to happen, and somebody's right. A group of people are going to make the right decision to continue their business models and develop and build and make smart buying choices and make smart long-term power contract choices, and they're going to be highly successful. And there's going to be another group that does something entirely different and potentially, tarnishes our industry. And I always say, and I think it's important, that as a group of people, it is our job, and I've taken it out as a personal mission of my own, but it's our job to go out in the industry every day and act as good corporate citizens. It's our job to go into the communities that we work in, and I hate to use this word, and write checks, and support Little League, and fix dog shelters, and repair street lights, and pick up trash, and cut the grass at the community centers, whether it's your people or you pay for somebody. Because the problem today, and I was just telling Parker a minute ago, I was like, the problem today is that we as a group of people, we need regulatory components to this business to help us right now. So if you're a Bitcoin miner and you're trying to get an interconnect, you know how difficult it is right now an ERCOT. There's a whole new study. There's all these new things you have to do. There's all this criteria. You have to have all these load studies. And the problem is if you get it wrong, you got to do it again. And when you get that one wrong, you got to do it again. So you have to get the right people involved, and you have to do it right the first time so that we don't waste their time. But if we aren't an industry that's driving positive impact within the community that we work in, and they're not our advocates. See, the trick is I always say, take Bitcoin, it's a widget, throw it on the side. That will get you nowhere when you're trying to get an interconnect. That'll get you nowhere when you're in a city and you need water. It'll get you nowhere when you need, to get transmission and you need somebody to allow you to cross their property. It'll get you nowhere. What will get you somewhere is that Little League team that won 4 championships and you got them new outfits and you didn't put your name on it. You just bought, they have their own little team name and you just paid for the stuff. And you didn't make a huge deal of it, or those things are the things that change how people think about our industry. And I talk about it a lot because, the widget, and I call it that all the time and people get mad at me, but the widget is the thing that paid for all of those things. You always say, hey, do you like jobs? I'm very proud of our facility in Rockdale. We have a $10 million local payroll. It might have gone over that because I think the payroll this week has grown exponentially. We have a $10 million local payroll in a town that has 5,590 people. I mean, it's huge, and every one of those people have health insurance, and every one of those people have 401ks, and now I hear we have dog insurance, right? I told my dog he's not allowed to have it because I don't want him to get, I use honey when he cuts himself because he chews out the stitches and spits them out anyway. I'm tired of bringing him to the vet. But we have dog insurance, right? I mean, that's pretty cool. We're like a real company. We have dog insurance. And those things are really important to people. I know that sounds funny, but it's really important to people. And when you're in a small town that doesn't have those type of companies there, it changes the way people think about how you operate. We also spend a lot of time, in the community, and several people here have heard me in the past. We built the dog park, and we built the dog shelter. Well, David Schatz, actually, Vice President of Operations, went over there one day with a chainsaw and started cutting all the trees down. And then next thing you know, he's like, hey, we're buying automatic watering bowls. Hey, we're going to redo the fences. And I was like, well, we might as well just redo the whole thing. And he's like, well, we were doing it anyway. We put air conditioning in, and we did all these things, and he's like a real dog shelter. But what ended up happening was the people that worked for us and their family members saw the action that we took, and they became our advocates. And I'll tell you why that's important. Because in Corsicana, Texas, we have a new facility. It's a gigawatt. There's kind of a joke behind it. One day somebody said, I'm just a mega Chad. When are you going to be a giga Chad? And it pissed me off, so I went and found a gigawatt, right? And it's just one of those things. Somebody said I couldn't build Rockdale, and so I went and built Rockdale faster than I ever thought I could. And the reason why it's important is because there is a lady in Corsicana, Texas, that has started what I call the Chad Harris Haters Club. She, on a daily basis, petitions, posts, crazy stuff about Bitcoin mining, how we're human trafficking, you name it. We're going to take all the water. Nobody's going to have any power. The lights are going to go off in your house when we come. Your power prices are going to triple. There'll be no water for anybody to use. By the way, Corsicana has more water than they know what to do with, and we're buying it at an above market rate, and they'll have more money than they'll know what to do with to do things like fix roads, pay for schools, and those things. And the reason why it's important is because she then recruited 675 people to become part of the Chad Harris Haters Club. It literally is, our goal is to stop Chad Harris and Riot blockchain. And I'm like, bring it on, because I love a good fight. But every time I go up there, I'm like, please come visit or call these people. And I give them a list of like 100 people. Call them. They live in Rockdale. Ask them. And what happens is they come and they're like, well, it's not noisy. And the people at the gas station said their power price didn't go up, and the water problem they have is from 25 years ago, and you don't even get your water from Rockdale. I'm like, yeah, that's the truth. Because if it wasn't for those people, I probably now would have 1,200 people that didn't like us. And it's really tough because I was going to buy a home in Corsicana. I was going to move there. I was going to live half my time there, half my time in Rockdale, but that's the last place I'm going. I mean, it's the last place I will go because this particular person has told people that Bitcoin mining is the worst thing on the planet. And so now I have to go recreate the same thing in Corsicana, which makes it really difficult because now I have all these people that are already upset because, you know, Bitcoin mining has human trafficking. And my argument to her that day was like, hey, where's the ATM machine? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, there's where the human trafficking is. Like that ATM machine on your street corner. And that's part of the problem is that we have to, as a group, on a collective basis, be constantly telling people the value that the widget brings. And that value is job creation. That value is economic impact. That value is community involvement. And if you're not doing one of those things, or if you're not getting third-party studies for your business and the community that you're running, you're making a critical error. And the reason why is because I can spit out factoids. Factoids like a 10-year economic impact in a town that has 5,590 people, currently at the size of our facility, is a little over $700 million. But what's more important is with 908 full-time employees and or contractors, it has a secondary job benefit of 2,304 employees that is created from our economic impact. Now, this is a town that has 5,590 people. Why is that important? Because then that same study was done in Corsicana, and it's over $1 billion in 10 years. That's how we go into these communities. Oh, and by the way, Corsicana has 7,716 or 18 people. It's not much bigger. Those towns are ripe in Texas and throughout America for our industry to come in and transform their communities. And we do that by creating a tax base. And so those tax bases, you know, the one thing that our company doesn't do is we do not use the tax abatement for school systems, because the smartest thing we think we can do is write the check to the school system, to the kids that are eventually, we hope, become team members. And so if they have the right tools necessary for job training, that ultimately we are training our own team member to come work for us. One of the great values, and I don't know, you know, who here has got a business running in Texas, right in this industry? Who here is using the Workforce Commission tax credits? Who here is using the training incentive programs that Texas offers? So here's something that I learned when I came here. It's a ton of paperwork, and it's an absolute pain. But the Texas Workforce Commission, in whatever community you're in, the Texas Workforce Commission will pre-interview every single person you're trying to hire. You can create tests that you need questions answered. You can create writing tests, math tests, all types of things, and they will pre-screen your employees for you, and it costs you $0. But you have to fill out all this paperwork. But why is that really important? Who here has a tax abatement in the county they're in? Great. Your tax abatement data comes directly from the Texas Workforce Commission, and if you set it up correctly, you do absolutely zero. Because they send the information to the clerk of courts or the commissioner's office, and you're removed from it because it's a third party. You don't even have to prove it. You don't have to have it notarized or any of those things. So that's one thing. Who here is using the 2-year colleges to do job training? Anyone? So in Texas, they'll pay for 50% of all your job training. They'll actually, you can tell them the curriculum that you would like, and they'll actually create it for you, hire somebody, and teach them how to teach your program. And it's, I mean, these are all things I figured out when I came here because, listen, I was absolutely broke. Like when we got here, we had $1 million and we'd run through it like hot water on a Tuesday in your bathtub. And so we did all these things that people, we still joke about it today. When my good fan in Corsicana was screaming at me last Tuesday at the top of her lungs, and she screams, "What about EWaste?" And I was like, "Oh, you use Google today." And so let me explain to you, when our company first started, we had so little money, we recycled everything, cardboard, anything we could recycle, because we ended up in a 1 year's time having 6 weeks worth of payroll by recycling. And I know that sounds silly, but like we recycle all of our wire, we recycle all, I mean, every single thing you can think of, we recycle. We still do it today because it's not, it's an intelligent thing. It's not just because we didn't have the money. And so one of the other things that I learned along the way is, and I don't think anybody's doing this, but I'll give you the idea. The school system, there's an accredited school system program that in Texas, let's just say, for instance, you want to train people how to drive a forklift. The Texas school system will buy a forklift for every forklift you buy. You buy one forklift, they buy one forklift. They put it at your facility, create a training program, and you teach the students how to drive their forklift. And then they, after they learn how to drive the forklift the school bought, they drive your forklift. And in the end of the day, you have now 2 forklifts. I mean, these are all things that along the way, we learned because we needed it, but along the way, we used it because it's how you get the community involved. And I'm really here today to talk about this differently rather than talk about, you know, scale and size. And yes, we did build the first 300 megawatts in 183 days. We built the next 400 megawatts in 117 days because I just wanted to beat the time. And we do work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, there's 238 full-time Windstone Riot team members. There's 459 full-time contractors that work for us. We pour all our own concrete. We do all our own electrical work. We do all our own high voltage, medium voltage, low voltage. We also own our own electrical manufacturing company. Yes, I am the guy that bought all the 4,000 amp breakers if you're looking for them. I bought every one that Siemens will make in the next year. I did it intentionally. Well, I needed them, but if you need them, call ESS Metron. That's where they're sitting. But ultimately, who cares about any of that stuff? I don't. Actually, I don't. It's just a thing that I do. I learned along the way after I rebuilt a really small high school's playground lights, that the real value was the time that I spent in the community. The real value was being able, in an industry that's highly profitable, and it's even highly profitable at $20,000, because you know none of us are mining Bitcoin at 19,000, or if we're smart, we're mining it much less than that, was that this industry allows us to do things that no other industry does. You're able to take the money you earn and you're able to put it back into a community and really transform these small places. And the value that that brings you as a person, you cannot replace it. I mean, it goes right up there with having kids, you know, and it really is. I mean, I'm proud to say that I've watched team members send their kids to college for the first time, buy homes, buy cars. I mean, when you hear of a 45-year-old person that's never had a bank account, and we take them to the bank and teach them how to do banking, and I hate to say it, yes, you do have to teach people that, and then they learn from it, and the next thing you know, they're buying a house, and I'm like, how did you go from not having a bank account to buying a house? And it's those things that are really important, and Bitcoin did it. And that's why I would say the widget isn't important, it's what the widget does. And so, you know, my message to you today is, you know, who cares if it's $20,000? As long as it's not $3,000 or 3152, I think is what the number was. That this industry is the perfect industry to transform the financial world, and each one of you are involved in it. You have the opportunity to reach out, and people that don't believe, teach them how to believe. And you don't have to, I always say, you know, and I think the last time Parker and I were together talking, afterwards, I made the comment, I was like, if we would as a group reach across to people to figure out how to talk to them in their language, and when they don't understand, stop trying to make them understand, just show them that they will literally eventually buy into the idea. And if you can get them to buy into the idea, and then you can show them the value, then you can explain to them how they control their own destiny, and then you can explain to them why it's important, why they don't need some of these financial institutions driving their messaging. Then all of a sudden, they become the bigger advocate because they become the infectious one. You know, a bad experience, you know, they always tell you in customer service, a bad experience gets you 9 pissed off customers. One bad experience, one good experience gets you 3. Right? So if you think about it, like, we have to be saints every day to get 3 people to buy into the idea. But if we're not saints, and the problem is we have some people out there in this industry that aren't saints all the time. You know, there's companies laying people off via email. You know, don't do that. It's a bad thing because you have people mad at you. And I get it. You know, there's ways to do things. But if we are a industry of supportive, forward-facing, truth-telling, PR truthful organizations, and I use that word PR truthful because spinning press releases that makes people wonder what the truth really is as bad as not telling the truth. Because the problem is that there's a group of us, and it's probably everyone sitting in this room, that cares about this industry. And then there's the group of us, there's the group of people that care about, you know, how they can increase their bottom line. And at the end of the day, this industry was created to allow everybody to compete fairly. And I always say, I started with one machine. I started with one machine, December 27th, 2017 was the day I plugged it in. And I went from that one machine to 30, to 100, to 600, to 1,000, to 5,522. And then I like blew up the power and I had to come to Texas because it was a disaster. And I did it in a really short period of time. And I did it when nobody really liked it. I did it when people weren't receptive to Bitcoin mining. I did it when people weren't receptive to power. I had a power contract that I sold my soul for that had a mark-to-market margin call every single week on a Monday, and my pulse would race when I would read the number because it was astonishing some days. And I was like, I do not have that money. But what the difference is now it's made it easier for all of us to work together. It's made it easier for us as a group to team up. I use this word team up against, and I use the word against, team up as a group against Encore, against ERCOT, against, you know, the public utility commissioners, and go as a group saying, hey, we're real companies. We have real economic impact. Here's what we did. And that's the problem. We have to say, here's what we did. Not, hey, we have all these things, and not tell them what we did. And so, you know, that's my message to you today. And you know, Bitcoin's great. But my real message is that, you know, as stewards of this industry, it's imperative that we go out there together and we're saying the same thing on a regular basis. Job creation, economic impact, community. Those 3 things will get us everything we need. Will get us interconnects, will get us tax incentives, will get us tax credits, will get us job training, will get all those things. And then you get to say, oh, and by the way, Bitcoin did that. Oh, and by the way, Bitcoin paid for that. Oh, and by the way, Bitcoin helped your school, paid for your playground, redid your lights, did all these things. And then all of a sudden, like, well, tell me about Bitcoin. You know? And I will say that I'm happy to report, and Parker Lewis might not like me to say this, but he's going to start doing Bitcoin Education 101, right? In small towns. And why is he going to do it? Because if we can teach business owners a little bit about it in drippings, it'll become infectious. So if anybody has any questions, fire away. I have all kinds of crazy answers.
So, is Bitcoin mining different than a Google or Amazon data center?
Absolutely. So a Google and an Amazon data center, they don't use even remotely the amount of power we do. And that's where the problem is they think that we're taking all the energy, and we aren't. Actually, we're doing the opposite. By us using energy, we're actually improving their economic, the whole, I mean, everything economic about it. I mean, using energy is good for the environment. We wouldn't be here without it. Or it would be in the dark. That would be one of the things. Question?
Thank you, Chad. That really brilliant and inspiring talk there, and I think that that's something the elements that Bitcoin mining can bring to the community is something that should be actually spread around the world. I mean, I come from Europe. I'm here to meet you guys, and I love what Texas has become over the last year. I also work in some other countries, and I was wondering if your educational programming could be a format. What you're developing in the schools, it could be a format, perhaps even sort of created that we could then recreate, copy-paste across different communities, whether it be South America or other disadvantaged communities as well, including in the in small towns. Let's spread it wildfire. Thank you.
That actually is a great idea. I never thought about that, but that actually would be pretty easy to do. You might just see that coming to something near you. Any other questions? Crickets, huh? Boy, you people, I swear, you sat in the back row, you didn't say anything. So anyway, at any time, you know, I know that Unchained Capital has been scheduling some larger tours that come through Rockdale, Texas. We're talking about doing a Bitcoin meetup on a regular basis at Brett's Barbecue. It was highly successful. He is not only a Bitcoin, he doesn't only just take Bitcoin, he is a Bitcoin taking mayor now. He just, I think the other night, maybe, what's today? Is today Wednesday? I think Tuesday or Monday night, he was sworn in as the mayor because he was tired of what was going on. So now he is the barbecue guy, the mayor, and he takes Bitcoin, which is pretty cool. Which actually is pretty cool. So we're talking about doing it on a monthly basis starting, I think, in August. We've talked about, so that'll happen. We are doing some larger tours at the facility in Rockdale, and then there'll be tours also coming up in Corsicana as we continue to build there. So if there's not any more questions, I'm going to turn it up. You got
one more. You might not be able to answer this. I don't know. If you can't, maybe post the answer in our Telegram chat. But any way we could contact your biggest fan to help you out?
Let me tell you something. You don't want to talk to this lady. So the problem is it's real clear. She found an agenda, and she likes to hear herself. You know, she just likes it. When Obamacare came out, she was like on NPR every week. I think that's what she's waiting for. She's really mad that the television stations decided not to interview her.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so the question is, are we using any geothermal using the creek? No, we're not. We're actually just doing the whole facility is immersion. I hate to say it, immersion is far better than any air-cooled building or container on the planet. No, it doesn't actually. Eventually, the form of what we, all of us call them a shoebox, that shoebox is going to go away, and that form is going to change into something much different, and your density will absolutely increase. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Well, fire away.
What are some of the issues around immersion that perhaps the market or you haven't necessarily considered given it's such a new technology?
Oh, there's a million issues with it. So it's interesting that you asked that question. The question was issues around immersion that you haven't figured out. We figured it out, trial by error. Interesting enough, the heat exchangers. You'll giggle when I tell you this. The heat exchangers, when they're manufactured, the manufacturer doesn't double flush the heat exchanger when he delivers it. There's tiny itty bitty particles in there, and so you have to double flush the heat exchangers to get them to fully work at their capacity. And you only learn that by turning on like 1,200 of them, right? And then you're like, something just doesn't seem to be working out correctly here. So that is, and again, it's, that's how you learn everything. And I think it's an interesting component to it. But that's a really good question. One of the other questions that kind of comes around that is we decided to go with the most expensive fluid over the least expensive fluid. And the reason why we chose to do that is because we knew that we were going to filter that fluid every couple of weeks, because anybody that's seen any of the videos, if you ever noticed, I turned on the first 10 megawatts and the end of the building wasn't finished. We were still pouring concrete. And so I was like, I knew I was going to have to clean this oil a lot. But it actually turned out to be a great strategy of just keeping it clean. And they say, ExxonMobil says if you filter the oil on a weekly basis, you'll get a 10-year life out of it. So that's probably the only thing. Any other questions? Fire away.
Yeah, are there any Bitcoin ATM units in Rockdale?
There are none.
Let's put
It's
one
ripe
there.
for the
Amen, brother.
picking. And there's not any in Corsicana either. And I will say that the Chamber of Commerce in Corsicana is much more receptive to Bitcoin than anywhere else.
In your experience, what was the biggest obstacle in growing at the rate that you did, and how did you overcome that?
That's a really good question. So when people ask me, what's the thing that keeps you up at night? And you'll crack up when I tell you this. The W on the fence when you drive in through the security gate is 1/4 of an inch off from one side to the other. And I think about it around the clock. I'm like, can somebody please fix it? I learned early on, so I come from a background of large-scale stuff, right? Construction and different things. And I kind of compartmentalize everything into widgets. And I'm like, I just need stuff. And I think the smart things that we did, early on, I was brave enough because we didn't have any money, I would personally sign for anything. I just was like, if we're going, literally, if we're going broke, it doesn't matter. And so along the way, I accidentally signed for tons of stuff, and I bought it at the right time. And so when you kind of think about the timing, and anyone here is, what's that pad mount transformer going? A 2.5 megawatt pad mount transformer? I've gotten prices lately that are $70,000, $80,000. I'm like something's wrong with you people, right? You actually times that by 2 that day. I bought 600 of them at $33,000, and so because I had the guts to hey, if we're gonna blow up, it doesn't matter. I bought a bunch of stuff, and then I'm real tactful at acquiring assets, and assets anything from conduit to breakers to wire. I think years from now, and I'm gonna need these things anyway, so I might as well buy them. I would say that the most difficult thing that we have had to deal with early on was people didn't like us, and banking was impossible. So it forced us to pay for everything in advance. And that makes for a difficult
business model.
Very difficult business model. And even today, I'll be honest with you, we do the same thing. Because that's the one trick that we did learn: the faster you pay, the faster you get it. If you don't make people wait for their money, they will wait on you before they'll wait on anyone else, right? And that's hard to do. That's hard to do. So that is probably having the bravery to buy things. My whole idea was if I buy it cheap, at some point I could sell it to somebody else.
Well, you were hedging against the future.
Yeah, that was my own hedge. I just didn't know what it was at the time.
Great risk.
So the question is, if you go to a new city, what do you do first? So first of all, the first thing I would do is not go to a city. I would go to a rural town. I would make sure it was outside. I would identify simple things. I would identify that it's outside of any additional tax zone. If it can be outside of a city in a rural area, then you don't have to pay the city tax. Then the very first thing I would do is, if it was really something that you were going to go and do, I would literally find every single Little League, soccer team, Girl Scouts. And I would go to Walmart and literally sit there and wait for the day that they're selling popcorn. And so, you have popcorn? I want all of it. And then they load it in your car and say, oh, no, I don't want it. You can have it back now. You go sell it again. And because those are all kind of the things that we did. Actually, we're outside of the city limits. And that's very, very... In Texas, there's a reason for it. So in Texas, you want to be outside the city limits because it allows the speed and efficiency to build without inspections. Doesn't allow you to build without, you have to follow the national building codes because you can't get insurance if you don't do that. And I'll give one insurance plug if anybody's looking for insurance. NFP Insurance Company built an entire Bitcoin insurance portfolio for substation, builder's risk, every component of it. I was very fortunate that I had a long-term friend from a different industry that went to work there. She came to meet me one day, then she got the CEO there. So CEO flew out on a Sunday. I cooked him dinner at my house, drove him around the site, and I said, look, there's a huge industry of good people that need insurance. If you can make it affordable, and I'll tell you the difference. I had Assured Partners, which is a great organization. They have lots of reach in the United States. They wanted to charge me $1 million to insure with BI our substation. I bought a transformer instead that year. And I think our insurance with NFP is like $100,000, which is reasonable. And so it is really the person there that heads up all their digital assets. Her name is Karen Knox. And they have done an incredible job. And I've given her name out, and multiple people are using her. And it's because they figured out how to write it. They have the right people. They have a construction team. They have a risk team. And they just come out and oh, hey, you need this. You don't need that. Let's put this in here. They can do your workman's comp and everything else along the way, as well as your auto, and package it all up for you. So that's been really, really useful for us.
It's incredibly inspiring and motivating to listen to you speak.
Thank you.
And thank you for what you do in this industry. It's
Thank you very much.
Incredibly important. You're a leader way out in front. I have a question about when you hear people like Warren Buffett say, I won't invest in Bitcoin because, it doesn't produce anything. What's your opinion about investing in Bitcoin itself? And obviously you're a miner and or investing in mining operations, mining companies. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I think it's and thank you very much for the compliments. I truly appreciate it. I love what I do. I'm fortunate that Riot lets me do what I want. Really, I was like, hey, I'm coming to work for you. Here's what I want to do. They're like, great. Don't break any laws. And I'm like, well, I'll just try not to. It's interesting that you asked that question because, Trent Stout from Priority Power and I, Trent was hired to work for Windstone, and then now he runs an entire division. And Trent and I are really good friends. And we joke all the time, Bitcoin mining is the only thing that takes electrons and stores it. It literally takes electrons and stores it. And when people like Warren Buffett is brilliant, smart guy, made all the right choices at the right time. It's kind of like my uncle. There's like, oh, buy Wrigley's gum, right? Like buy these things that, pay dividends for years and years and years to come. And I agree with that strategy. That's just not mine. And I think it's okay to have people that don't believe in whatever it is, and it's not our job to educate them. It's our job just to say, hey, there's this really cool thing, you might be interested in it, and when you want to know about it, call me. And you just leave it alone. Because when you try to drive it down their throat, and that's, in any industry, it's like the Nutrisystems, right? If you know somebody that's on Nutrisystem, they're like, it'll change your life. And you're like, you just started eating less. That's how it changed your life. You were eating 10,000 calories a day. Now you're eating 3, right? And you're sucking on air wafers. I mean, literally, that's why you lost the 185 pounds. It wasn't anything spectacular. But they try to push it on you to the point of like, I'll never even look at it. And so that's kind of the message that I was trying to say is like, just introduce them to the idea, offer it to them, and when they're interested, they'll come back. Because I think, Bitcoin mining is far more. I realized in August of 2020 that our business was not about Bitcoin mining. It was about running energy efficiently. And I only knew it because during like a 4-day period that August, there was like $9,000 a megawatt hour. And I was like, hold on for a second. And I got the first credit and I was like, I'm not paying a power bill for like 5.5 months. And I was like, hold on, this is a power business. This isn't Bitcoin mining. And that's when I started I knew it, but I'd never seen it. And I'd never seen it at that kind of scale. And so most people just don't understand, Bitcoin mining is the most efficient battery. Bitcoin mining is the fastest way to stabilize the grid. Bitcoin mining can off and on in nanoseconds. Bitcoin mining, last week alone we curtailed, I think it was 17 hours and 45 minutes. This week, not so much. Why? Because wind's blowing like mad. I think, what is it, like 10 gigawatts of power from wind yesterday? There's negative power pricing in the Pan and West Texas right now. Negative, so, there's the theory hey, you can use negative power pricing. In the South Zone, I think power hasn't cracked over $40 today or something like that. And so it's just how the market works. And so if you are running your business like an energy business, it happens to mine Bitcoin. In the end, you're either selling power, getting a credit for power, or you're storing, you're putting Bitcoin on your balance sheet. Anybody that gets it instantly. Warren Buffett's never going to get it because he said too long that it's the devil, and he can't come back across the road. I got all kinds of crazy answers if you got any other ones. Hell yeah, right? So the joke is that we moved 500,000 cubic yards of dirt to build our substation, and so we cut all this earth, and one day, I was making this video and I couldn't remember what I was going to say, and I turned around and was like, well, there's an amphitheater right here. And so the guy that has the #1 EDM song right now, Numb, Stosh, out of Los Angeles, I've asked him to come and play when I have this concert. And he's like, I just might do it. And so, but we're actually building, we're pouring all the concrete, we're building the retaining wall, and we are going to have an outdoor concert. I said, Jason, I don't care if Bitcoin's $1. We're doing it anyway. It'll be the greatest all-night rave there is. And I'm a huge dance music fan. So yes, we're definitely having that. Any other questions? I can do this for weeks. Anyway, so if you don't follow me or you don't know how to get a hold of me, you can track me down on Twitter or you can track me down on LinkedIn. It's pretty simple. And if you ever are interested in coming to the site, I'll leave you a message. The person you have to track down is Lauren Mathern. She actually runs my life, but it's Lauren Mathern. Lauren.Mathern at windstone.com, windstone.us, and it's Therene, Mathern, and she's the one that schedules all that stuff. All right. Again, thank you so much for having me today. I always enjoy talking about, this industry.